Okay, Arif. So let's get started without any further ado. I guess there's no one else going to be joining us. So before we get started, a quick formal introduction on my end. My name is Mohammed Shoaib. I'm a cybersecurity trainer certified from EC Council. EC Council is the leading organization for trainings and certifications in the domain of cybersecurity. And the course Certified Ethical Hacking is brought by EC Council itself. Okay, it was developed and it's proprietary to EC Council, which is people who are completely new to this domain. So if you want to learn about cybersecurity and the fundamental concepts of cybersecurity with all the terminologies used to do, certified ethical hacking is the primary course to go for. Okay. And the version running right now is version 12, the latest version. Okay. Every year the version gets updated. Okay. And newer techniques and newer attacks and defense methods are introduced in the course. Okay. So now, before we again dive into the advanced concepts, let me clear a misconception among students that they usually have, that hacking and ethical hacking are one and the same thing. Okay, so now that's a very wrong idea. Hacking is completely different from ethical hacking, and let me clarify that first. So when you talk about hacking, that is the procedure of trying to gain access to information systems. Now, the main question is, what does this gaining access to information systems mean? Okay, so it technically means that when I hack your device or your mobile phone, for example, I have complete control of your mobile phone. I can access the data, I can steal the data, I can destroy that data, delete it. Okay, and I can, once I've obtained that access, I can sell that data to someone else. Okay, and all of this is done without the permission or without the consent of the person owning those systems. Okay, so once the hack, again, as I've mentioned, all of this is done only for the hacker's benefit, and sometimes they even do it just for fun. Now, these devices, information devices, could be anything. I've taken the example from mobile phone, but they could be as big as a database or a complete cloud organization as well. Now, on the other hand, when you talk about ethical hacking, it is the procedure of trying to find vulnerabilities. Okay, a vulnerability is a loophole, a weakness, or a flaw in the security of the information systems. And using these weaknesses, only hackers try to exploit them and try to get access to the data. So our job in ethical hacking is to find these vulnerabilities or loopholes before the hackers do, with the consent or with the permission of the organization. And once we find these vulnerabilities, we report it back to the organization so that they can remediate it. Remediate in the sense, apply the necessary security patch for it. And once the security patch is updated, it closes the doorway for the hacker to cause any further harm. So with ethical hacking, you're trying to protect the organization, you're trying to strengthen the security infrastructure, okay, rather than cause any harm to the organization. Now, depending on these two terms, hacking and ethical hacking, we can categorize the types of hackers as well. There's someone known as a black hat hacker, there's someone known as a gray hat hacker, and then there's someone known as a white hat hacker. Black hat hackers are also commonly called as cyber criminals. These are people who perform hacking for their own benefit. Okay, and again, as I've mentioned, sometimes they even do it just for fun without asking for consent or permission. On the other end of the spectrum, we have someone known as a white hat hacker. White hat hackers are ethical hackers or penetration testers who abide by the laws and policies set by the organization and work to increase the security, to find the vulnerabilities and remediate them. And in between, there's a third category called a gray hat hacker. A gray hat hacker is also called as a bug bounty hunter. The reason why he's called so is that he works like a black hat hacker. He doesn't find, I mean, he doesn't ask for permission before finding the vulnerabilities. But one common property between him and white hat hacker is he doesn't take advantage out of it. So once he finds a vulnerability, he reports it back to the company for a bounty. A bounty is something which benefits him for finding that vulnerability and reporting it to the organization without taking advantage out of it. It could be a financial reward, it could be a reputational reward, anything which benefits him for finding that vulnerability. Now, all these three types of hackers, whether we take black hat hacker, gray hat hacker, or a white hat hacker, perform hacking or ethical hacking in a certain procedure. And that procedure is called as hacking cycle or cyber culture. So when you work for an organization, the first question they ask you is define your hacking cycle or the procedure that you follow to perform penetration testing. In order to, and again, from EC Council, from the CEH course, there's a standard procedure of performing hacking or ethical hacking. And EC Council has divided that into 5 simple steps. So let me list out the steps one by one, so you have a better idea about what we'll be learning throughout the course. And then we'll briefly discuss about each of these steps as well. Okay, so the first step is called as information gathering. It can also be referred to as a reconnaissance or footprinting. Second step is called as scanning. It can also be referred to as enumeration. Third step is gaining access. Fourth step is maintaining access. And the last step is reporting or clearing traces. Now, if you notice over here, I've only mentioned or in the last step. Okay, so the reason being that no matter what kind of a hacker you take, whether it be a black hat hacker, a white hat hacker, or a gray hat hacker, all these three types of hackers perform the first four steps in the exact same order. Okay, they're not going to change any of the steps up to step number 4. What varies is the last step. So if you're a white hat hacker, you perform the first 4 steps, and in the end, you report the vulnerabilities that you've found to the organization. But on the other hand, if you're a black hat hacker, you won't be reporting it to the organization, but you try to remove all the evidences. Okay. So that in simple terms is called as clearing traces, deleting the log files, deleting event logs, deleting the footprints, staying anonymous so that you cannot be traced out. Okay. Now, before we dive into these concepts one by one, Arif, any questions or doubts up to this part? Again, please feel free to unmute your mic at any certain point and ask your questions. That's not a problem at all.
Okay, sir.
Any questions up to here?
No, sir.
Perfect. Now let's go with the first step, which is information gathering. Now, as the name itself suggests, information gathering is nothing but trying to gain as much data or information as possible about the target organization. And all of this data is gained passively. What I mean by passively is that you do not contact the organization anyway. You gather all this information from third-party sources or the internet. Now, to list out what information that we try to gather, I've mentioned it on the screen here. Now, the first thing you need to perform information gathering is IP addresses. So from information gathering, you get the IP addresses of the organization and the range of IP addresses used by their multiple servers in the organization. Then who is records, understanding who is hosting the website for them, when was it first created, when was their website last updated, when will their website expire, all that falls under who is records. Then you get the DNS records. Every has a DNS server, which links the IP addresses to each and every server and the host name of the server. So we practically try to get the records of the data in those DNS servers. Then the employee details, example, contact numbers, email addresses, publicly leaked usernames and passwords, the fax numbers, okay, all that falls under employee details. Then you try to find the domains of the organization, the subdomains or different websites of the organization. Okay. And then finally, you try to find the operating system information. What OS are they using for their different servers? Now, believe it or not, all this information is readily available on the internet itself to be gathered. Okay. Now, once you have gathered all this information, the next phase is scanning. Now, in scanning, we get some extra information by directly making active connections with the target. Okay. So to define scanning in a much better way, let me break it down into 3 parts. There's network scanning, port scanning, and vulnerability scanning. So in network scanning, you try to figure out in your target organization or the organization you're performing penetration testing for, how many devices exist in it. So in their local intranet network, in their local organization network, how many active devices are there, or alive systems or alive hosts are there? How many servers do they have? How many routers do they have? How many, again, firewalls do they have? How many IDS, IPS systems, intrusion detection and prevention systems do they have? So getting a network image of the complete organization. Once you know the list of all the devices in their network, then you perform port scanning on them, figuring out on each of those devices what ports are open and what services or what applications are running on those ports. Once you know the ports and the services and applications, finally we perform vulnerability scanning. During this phase, we try to figure out on those services or on those applications that are running in the organization, are there any weaknesses that can be exploited? Excuse me. Are there any vulnerabilities that you can attack on? Okay. During this phase, we're using a very important tool called the Nessus tool. So if you go to your browser, you can search for Tenable Nessus. And then you can click on the first link that you have over there. And this is the official website of the Nessus application. If you scroll down, there's a tool called Nessus Expert. As you can notice, this is the same tool that is used in real-time scenarios in organizations to perform vulnerability scanning. And we will be working with the same tool in our classes as well. So if you scroll down, if you click on buy, you can notice this is around $5,800 or so. Okay, so don't worry, the organization will provide this tool to you when you work for them. Okay, but in our classes, we don't need to make any purchase here. This tool is available for a trial version as well, where we can learn this tool for free. Okay, and I have the same tool installed on my system as well. Let me show you. It runs on the port 883455. And this is how the login portal looks like. So once you have the tool installed and on your device, this is basically what the tool looks like, where you can perform various kinds of scan. Okay. So you can perform a network scan, an advanced scan, a dynamic scan, a malware scan, a web application scan. These are all the different types of scans that you can perform in an organization. And once the scans are performed, it gives you the list of weaknesses in each and every system or vulnerabilities. So the vulnerabilities are categorized in 5 levels of critical, high, medium, low, or information-based vulnerabilities. Okay. And in an organization, in a real-time scenario, critical, high, or medium vulnerabilities should never exist. If they do, there's high chances of a cyber threat happening on it. Okay. So again, we'll learn how to find these vulnerabilities. We'll learn how to understand these vulnerabilities. We'll learn how to attack on these vulnerabilities and defend our system as well from these vulnerabilities in the class. Okay. So again, just trying to show you all this so that you have a better idea on the tools we'll be using, because all the tools that we use are real-time based tools. So tools that are used in organizations at the moment. Okay. After this is done, then we go into the gaining access part. This is the main core of the subject, where you try to learn how to attack systems on the vulnerabilities. Okay, so let me list out the topics. Oh, here they are. So the first topic we learn is system hacking, where we understand how to crack or bypass a Windows operating system password. So for example, if you have Windows 11 or Windows 10 or Windows 7 or whatever it is, we learn how we can crack or bypass the password for that system, okay, and get access to the internal files. Then we talk about malwares. Malwares are nothing but malicious softwares, and there's tons and tons of categories of malwares. There's viruses, worms, trojans, backdoor, spyware, whatnot. So we'll practically learn how to create each of these malwares, how to defend our system from these malwares, and how to detect these malwares if they are already installed on our systems. Okay, so from the very basics till the advanced part, you're going to learn all about malwares. Then there's a bonus concept called malwares advanced. This is not a topic from EC Council, but we have included it so you have a better understanding on the programming of malwares. Okay, how do you build malwares using Python programming? So you don't need to learn Python separately for this course. But again, if you have knowledge on Python, this bonus concept could help you out, could increase your knowledge on malware development. Then comes network penetration testing, where we learn all the common attacks on networks. So sniffing attack, MITM attack, denial of service attacks. So these are the attacks, technical terms used for these attacks, where you can try to see what data is traveling in a network. How do you capture the usernames and passwords of the victims? Or how do you shut down servers? All that falls under these attacks. Along with that, we'll also learn how to attack Wi-Fi routers and crack the passwords of Wi-Fi routers. Okay. Then comes social engineering attacks, where we learn how do hackers trick users into giving away their credentials. How do they deceive users by making fake login web pages and sending those fake login sites to victims and getting their passwords. Okay, so these fake login pages could be social media pages, could be bank login pages, what. So we practically understand how do phishing attacks happen and how do we distinguish between an original page and a fake or a duplicate page. Then after that, we have web application attacks, where we learn what are the common website attacks that are used in real-time scenarios. So how do hackers hack the databases? How do they inject malicious scripts in the website? How do they log in as other users, get the passwords of other users? How do they upload malicious files to the server and get complete remote access of server? All that we learn in web application pen testing. Okay, so attacks for that are SQL injection attack, cross-site scripting attack, broken authentication attacks, file upload attacks, and so on, so respectively. After that, we have vulnerability assessment. This is a very important topic in a real-time scenario in organizations, where you learn how to assess each and every vulnerability. How do you find the risk of the vulnerability? How do you attack on that vulnerability? And how do you prevent your systems from being attacked by that vulnerability? So whatever vulnerabilities are shown or weaknesses are shown in the assess tool, we try to assess the impact of each and every vulnerability and understand how our systems can be secure from these. Okay, so all that is discussed in the vulnerability assessment class. And then finally comes hacking mobile phones, where we learn how to attack Android phones and get remote connection of the Android phones. So if you notice one thing over here, they're comprehensively covering each and every endpoint. We're talking about system security, we're talking about network security, we're talking about wireless security, you're talking about web application security, you're talking about mobile security. Each and every aspect or each and every endpoint is covered in CEH. After this, you have two small topics, which are maintaining access and reporting or clearing traces. Now, in maintaining access, we learned how do hackers maintain persistent connections. What I mean by persistent connections is that if a user restarts the system or shuts it down and starts after a very long time, how does a hacker still maintain connectivity with this device? How is he making that connection between him and the victim's system that persistent is what we learn in maintaining access. And finally, we learn reporting of clearing traces, where I'll show you if you're an ethical hacker, how do you generate a report and submit to your organization? Or if you're a black hat hacker, how do you remove the evidences? So we're going to be learning this course in two tracks simultaneously or in two perspectives, both an ethical hacker's perspective and a black hat hacker's perspective. So that would give you a better understanding of the practical concepts of each and every course. I mean, each and every topic in the course. Okay. Now, since not everyone could be from a technical background, we have a few prerequisites to cover as well. So before we dive into the advanced concepts, we'll be covering a few basic concepts as well. Okay, basic general topics such as networking. So first we'll learn what IP addresses are, what are IPv4 addresses, what are IPv6 addresses, what is a DNS server, what is a DHCP server. We'll learn about networking basics. Then we'll learn about Linux and Windows commands because we need to install a lab setup with Kali Linux in it. Kali is a Linux-based operating system. Not this one, sorry, kali.org. Yeah, this is the official website for Kali. And we'll be using this operating system in our devices to perform the practical lab setup. Okay. So all our attacks, all our defense is done with the Kali operating system. So we learn how to install this OS, okay, and how to run that OS, run Linux commands. So after those 3 or 4 concepts are done, then we dive into these concepts, the hacking cycle concepts. Okay. So the whole course is for a duration of 35 days away, where you'll have classes from Monday to Friday, every day for 1 hour. I've actually started the batch last week. We have completed only one single session for half an hour on networking basics, but I'm going to start afresh again from tomorrow, from Monday at 9 p.m. So we have a batch running at 9 p.m. And you can join those classes as well as demo. You can understand how we are taking the sessions and if you're getting good, proper practical knowledge or not, and then you can decide on joining. Okay, so the whole course is divided in a 15:45 ratio. First 10-15 minutes, we'll discuss the theoretical topic. Okay, and the remaining 45 minutes, we'll discuss the practical aspect of the topic. Okay, and yeah, you have the notes prepared. You don't need to prepare any notes for this course because all the notes is already prepared for you. As you can notice over here, we have the notes for each and every class already prepared. I'll be sharing these notes to you at the end of each and every class, and you'll also be getting the recordings as well. Okay, so yeah, that's that. Arif, any questions or doubts up to this point?
Sir, course duration?
35 days. Arif.
Only 35 days?
35 days. That is more than sufficient for CH to be done.
I am not from CS background. I'm from BCom, sir.
No problem. Again, and that's why, as I've mentioned, before we dive into the advanced concepts, we'll discuss these prerequisites. We'll talk about the basic concepts first, required for CH, and then we'll dive into the CH concepts.
But I am currently pursuing my MCA in Bangalore, sir.
Okay. Are you planning on shifting to cybersecurity or something?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, again, this is a proper course to go with because, as I've mentioned, you don't need to have any CS background knowledge at all. Even if you're completely from a different background, even from a mechanical or BCom or whatever background it is, we'll be speaking the course from the very basics. We'll talk from the ABCs of networking, ABCs of Linux commands and whatever. And from there, we'll take one by one a step towards the advanced course. So it's going to be very easy. We'll talk from the very basics itself. So the transition is not at all tough.
Not. Sir, course to access 1 year, sir, or 135 days? You know?
Course duration is 35 days. After that, you'll have the access to recordings for 1 year. You can access the recordings whenever you want.
So, sir, I'm not joining for online classes. Then what will happen?
At the moment, there's only online sessions, Arif, because I am located in a different location from a different region. I belong to Andhra Pradesh, but the institute is in Hyderabad. So I take classes for them online. There's no other alternative.
There is no any recording classes, sir? For me. My college
yeah.
starts from 9 itself,
Sorry?
9 to 4:30.
Yeah, again, as I've mentioned, we will have recordings as well. Each and every class will be recorded, and we'll be sharing the recordings to you directly. So if you're unavailable for the class at our specified time, you can watch the recordings later as well and ask me your questions. I'll be sharing my contact number. So if you have any questions or so, you can directly contact me and ask those after you go through the recordings.
Okay. Any real-time projects, sir, we can do then?
Again, I'll be showing you the tools, whatever tools we use are real-time based itself. So we'll have a basic small experimentation on real-time websites. Any other questions, Arif?
No, sir.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that's that, Arif. I would recommend, if possible, you join the session tomorrow at 9 p.m. And yeah, you could see how we are learning the concepts. So yeah, that's that. Ravi, can you hear me? Hello, Ravi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh no, not you, Arif. There's another student who has just joined, Ravi Kumar. So I just wanted to inform him that the course demo just ended. So if you need a demo, guys, you can join tomorrow at 9 p.m. again. We'll take the first class networking concept, so that can act as a demo as well. Okay. So yeah, that's it, Arif. Nothing further. I'm going to exit the session now. And I'll
Okay.
see you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.